Well, thank you all for being present. I'm James Anthony Walker, and I'm SBPRC Chair for the year 2022. And with that, I would like to call this meeting to order. You all have a copy of the agenda before you. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, the meeting will proceed based on the agenda presented before you. So we are all here this morning to discuss the disaffiliation process. And we did receive some formal documents from the Mountain Sky Conference, and upon receipt of those documents, we disseminate that information to you via our communications team and by regular mail what that formal notice was. What the church leadership has decided pursuant to Reverend Smith's guidance is that the SPPRC will manage the process in terms of disseminating information, questions, and answers. However, when it comes to the actual vote, that will be handled by the church council, and each member will be entitled to one vote. So with that, it is my task and my commitment to you to let you know that our committee and myself will speak to you regarding this matter in full truth, facts, and transparency. I say this is because this is a hot button subject, and there's been several items on social media. Some are accurate, some are not accurate. So it is our endeavor to speak to you again in truth, in fact, and full transparency. What the process will be is we will have other church-wide meetings similar to this one. In addition to that, we will have smaller cluster meetings that are more intimate and will allow you to discuss the merits of the issue. In addition to that, we will have Zoom meetings for those who are not able to meet in person. And those of you who are not comfortable with the crowds, we will have individual sessions upon request. The other aspect that we have is that we want you to be as informed as possible. And with that, Reverend Smith and some others will be presenting a biblical history on what the subject is, the subject of human sexuality and human homosexuality. What does the word actually say? So you will be given the opportunity to engage in those discussions, and those currently will be chaired by Reverend Smith. The other point I want to make regarding the disaffiliation is that there is no timetable. Although the documents that were presented said there was a June 15th deadline, that is if you want your disaffiliation process to be heard at this year's annual conference. However, we may disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church at any time. So it was the consensus of our committee that it's more important to get it right, and should we come to that process, we will do it at that appropriate time. The other thing we want to do specifically for this session is define the problem. So we will be asking questions, and we are going to limit discussion, and we would ask that you not engage in debate, as this is simply a question and answer session to make you more informed. So with that, I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce your SPPRC board. They will serve as ambassadors for this charge, and feel free to speak with any of them on that mission. They are Ms. Bernice Hatter, Ms. Flossie Rollerson, Diane Cooper, Sharon Hartsfield, Mr. A.J. Harmon, Ms. Filene Kennedy, Mr. Ray Jones Jr., and Mr. Ron Green. Now, there are other means that we will be disseminating information, and that is through our Scott United Methodist Church website. We will have a special section that is specifically designated to this charge, and I certainly want to thank A.J. Harmon for his efforts in putting that together. You'll be able to, one, read all the information, and that any information that's on the website has been vetted by the SPPRC committee and Reverend Smith. You also will have the opportunity to submit any information that you feel relevant. You may submit that to myself or Filene Darwin or any SPPRC member, and we will follow our processes and review that information, and if appropriate, we will place that information on the website. And although it's not in place at this time, the website will have an information button that you can click. You can submit comments and questions. So with that, I would like to now ask that each one of our church leaders, because I feel it's important that the leadership of the church wrap their arms around us and help guide us in this process. So I'm just going to ask the leadership of the church to, should they choose, to just give a brief comment. Okay. You want it on the agenda over here, and you're down here.
This needs to come before the meeting.
Okay, all right.
I'm jumping to place in the agenda because I think it's important for you to understand why this is happening at this time and where does this even come from. It's important for you to understand the history of what the United Methodist Church has been debating since 1976. 72, thank you. Has been debating since 1972 around ordination of homosexuals. Where is the church, how does the church view homosexuals? This has been going on for that amount of time. As the time has progressed, within the United States, the vote gets closer and closer. But outside the United States, with Philippines churches, United Methodist churches, and the African churches, and other churches outside the United States, the vote remained the same. There has always, which has put in the majority the people who are more traditional, who do not want homosexuals ordained or married or anything else. So that's been what's been going on, and that debate's been going on, like I said, since '72. In 2016, the debate got to the point where the delegates, and I was a delegate to that General Conference, the delegates of the General Conference asked the bishops to come up with a way forward. There seemed to be no resolution, and so they asked them to come up with a way forward. In that way forward, there were committees, different groups that were working on different proposals. The proposal that really came forward is called the protocol, which gave churches that wanted to disaffiliate a way to do that. And the protocol also would have granted a new denomination $25 million. The only part of the protocol that passed when we had a 2019 special General Conference was the protocol which fell under 2553. And that was the protocol for how churches can disaffiliate. That's the only thing that passed out of the 2019. The rest of the protocol was to be voted on in 2020. You know what happened in 2020. COVID happened. So That vote was put off, and it continues to be put off. We're hoping that it'll happen in 2024, but there's no certainty that vote will happen. But the interesting thing is that the vote that did happen was 2553. And in that, there was a process laid out for how churches could disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church for reasons, let me find the correct wording here, for reasons of conscience regarding a change in the requirement and provisions of the Book of Discipline related to the practice of homosexuality and the ordination of marriage or of marriage of self-avowed practicing homosexuals, as resolved and adopted by the 2019 General Conference. The actions of its annual conference related to this issues. So those are the two reasons. If you disagree with what is in the Book of Discipline around the ordination of self-avowed practicing homosexuals, or you disagree with your conference around those issues, you can disaffiliate. The interesting thing about this was the conservative group that was really wanting the more progressive church to disaffiliate. That didn't happen, so they disaffiliated. And it's interesting that they were the ones that passed this, and the Book of Discipline as it reads right now is still very traditional. But they are wanting to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church. Another interesting thing you might find interesting, the trustees put this out, our conference trustees put this disaffiliation process out because they thought there would be churches that were ready to disaffiliate and that they would be ready by the June annual conference, this June's annual conference. Turns out, right now, no churches have moved for disaffiliation. That doesn't mean that they won't in the future, but they're not doing it now. And one of the reasons that is happening is because there's still too much unclear about what this whole process means and what will be their options should they disaffiliate. Now, there has been a launching of the Global Methodist Conference, which is where it is thought a lot of people, a lot of churches will go to, the Global Methodist Conference. That has been launched, but that really, right now, doesn't have a whole lot on its page about what's going on or why you would come. And they're waiting for more power to be given to them by the General Conference. So they're waiting for 2024. So they hope the General Conference will lay out more about what this means. Now, I got this from the DS last night. She called me. And so a lot of people are waiting for 2024, hoping that General Conference happens to lay out more specifically what can happen, what will happen. The district superintendent did admit that the way this came out was not the way that they wanted it to come out, because it caused so much anxiety among churches that thought they had to get this done, or were wondering, why are we even doing this? And you know, that happened in this church as well. So that is the reason why at this point we want to give you information, as much information as we can on what this might mean. This does not mean we are going to disaffiliate. It means this is an open discussion for the whole church. So that is why we are meeting. That's why we will have more meetings. This is a discussion. I can't make that decision for you. The leadership can't make that decision for you. That decision comes down to each one of you. But we're trying to make sure you have the correct information to move forward. So, Yes.
Now, just a moment, just so everyone will be able to capture it, we have a microphone for you.
Let's bring it up at the end. Let's let them.
In the history you just covered, can you cover a bit about the vote at 2019 regarding the traditional plan versus the one church plan? What transpired around that?
She wants to know what transpired around the vote of the traditional plan and the one church plan. Now you're stretching me to remember, but what is going to proceed is what is called the protocol. The one church plan was not accepted, as I recall.
The traditional plan is what is proceeding.
The traditional plan with the protocol of how churches can disaffiliate and funding and other things that has to be in place so that churches can move forward. Right now, the Judicial Council has said for those annual conferences that wanted, in the United States, that wanted to disaffiliate, they can't until after the next General Conference, because that plan has not been laid out. Only churches at this point have an option to disaffiliate or stay. And that plan is not really worked out as well as it should be. So, but as I said, the reason for this is we're having these meetings is for you not to get anxious. We're going to cover this, we're going to deal with it, we're going to let you ask questions, we're going to let you debate, but not at this point. So, did you have another question?
I'm still on the traditional plan.
Yeah.
As I followed the vote, and the vote overwhelmingly was traditional plan, which is in line with what is currently
in the Book of Discipline.
In the Book of Discipline. And are we going to cover what the Mountain Sky Conference, based upon that vote, the Mountain Sky Conference said we are not going to abide by the traditional plan. Is that not correct?
I'm not clear on what the Rocky Mountain, or what the Mountain Sky, but I know the Western jurisdiction, all the conferences in the Western jurisdiction have basically said they're not going to follow the traditional plan.
Well,
and that's
because of us, Mountain Sky.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
concerned with.
Yes, and that is correct. There is a document that we do, that SPPRC has reviewed, in which several churches from the Mountain Sky Conference said, no, we will not comply with the 2019 vote or the issues of human sexuality. So that, I am in possession of that document, and it'll be vetted and it'll be disseminated to you. But Charlene, I see you did have the microphone for the next question, but just so we stay on point, just a point of order, if we could just have the leaders who wanted to make a statement, if you could just make a brief statement on your disposition regarding this. Sister Barbara, if you could. And excuse me, Sister Barbara is our co-lay leader.
Good.
Currently, ordained pastors are not to perform same-sex marriage. This has been asked me, risking disciplinary action if they do and practicing LGBTQ people. Also cannot become ordained pastors according to the church book of discipline. So some of the people, they have a lot of questions trying to find a way forward. They want to know what can they do to find a way forward. And I was told that this isn't anything new to us because homosexuality was first openly debated at General Conference in 1972. So, debating, you know, Charlene, when you debate something.
Point
like,
of order.
Yes, going forward.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yes. So, we debating, going forward, like today you asked a question, different people asked a question. We're debating, figuring out how we're going to. We're not debating. Okay. But there are some people.
Charlene, I will, Barbara has
Okay.
the floor, but
I'll
Charlene, I
okay.
did recognize you.
Okay. And I know there's a lot of mixed feeling. I'll just cut this short so one can go ahead and take over. We all feel like we're on a spiritual journey. And we welcome and affirm everyone in this congregation, in this church, because we all are God's people. And we don't want to discriminate against anyone who come forward that comes to Scott Church, because everybody's welcome. Because God made all of us. So we can't judge anyone, and we shouldn't judge anyone.
Sure. Brother George is the council chair, and after Brother George is recognized, we will embark on questions, and I do have the names.
Hey, Mr. G.
We get to you, Barry.
Not yet, Barry.
Okay, you all know me. I'm George Gorey. I'm chair of church council at this current time. I'm also as your representative to annual conference. I am pro tem member by position of the SPPRC, so I am aware of what's going on. As church council chair, I'm going to reserve my position to address things as they come forth to church council, but I will be in concert with SPPRC throughout this whole process so that when it does come to church council, I can address it in an appropriate way. So you're welcome to come to me for answers, as I'm going to be in tune with SPPRC, or if I can't find an answer for you, I will get back to you as soon as I do have an answer, okay?
Thank you. Now is the time for questions and
Wait.
answers, but we do
Wait,
have
you
ground
got
rules.
Ron Green.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ron Green.
I don't have much to say, and I think everybody can hear me. And the one thing that I would like for all of us to do is I read all the information that's come out, and I ask you to, as a member of the church for almost 45 years now, this is, we're going to need to pray about some things.
Yep.
And prayer is going to get us through it. This is a challenging decision that will need to be made by this church that will protect Scott, and those are the things that are important. How does this process affect Scott United Methodist Church, which we've been in the United Methodist, or in the church system for 118 years. So I have read the information that is available. I have my own opinions. Please do not leave here and go out and badmouth whatever, but pray about the things that are important in this decision. And then we'll all get through this on one accord. Thank you.
Now the floor is open for
Mr.
question
G.
and answers. Excuse me, Barry. Barry, you are not recognized. Now's the time for question and answers. And Sister Charlene, we will get to you. Oh, Charlene, you were next. But we do have ground rules. The discussion is limited to questions and answers and not debate. The discussion is open to questions and answers and not debate. Sister Charlene.
Please pardon my ignorance. I'm just trying to be clear on what is the discussion. And let me state at the front, I am a gay rights advocate. So in behalf of my little brother, Michael Porter.
Hold the mic close.
Please pardon my ignorance. I'm just trying to be clear on what the discussion is. I am not clear. But let me at the beginning state, I am a gay rights advocate in behalf of my little brother, Michael Porter. I don't understand, is the discipline possibly going to change? Is that is that an ongoing discussion, that at some point the discipline may change? I have several questions. Is that a question?
One question.
So is
until
the
everyone-
discipline at some point possibly going to change?
Reverend Smith, the question is
I
the
heard it.
discipline, does will the discipline change?
Yes, the discipline will change at some point. A lot of things depend on what happens in 2024, and if the church does split, then right now, if it's the protocol that's on the floor for General Conference to approve, the United Methodist Church will continue to exist in the United States, and other churches will be, they think, going to the Global Methodist Church or being independent.
So disaffiliation is if we do not agree with the current discipline. Is that correct?
No, disaffiliation is if you do not agree with the current discipline, yes.
And the current discipline says disavows homosexuality? What is it? I don't understand. What is it? What, please?
It has specific language
Could you give me a
Well,
synopsis?
Charlene, just for the sake of time, and we want to recognize if you'd be so kind as to either write your question down or email it to me, and that way we as a group, we can get the appropriate answer. Is that fair? All right. Okay, Barry, you have the phone, and then,
Yeah,
okay, hold on.
I'd just like to know the difference between the two. If we stay affiliated, what does that do? And if we vote to not be affiliated, what's the difference? If we say yay or nay?
I'm
What
not
happens?
sure if we have enough information at this point.
To address the if hypothetically, the if is, if we stay in the United Methodist Mile High Conference, we would have to follow the discipline that's adopted by that conference. If we decide to go with the traditional values, then we would be under the discipline of the, what is it, global maybe? Whatever the new conference would be, that would be the discipline you would follow if you decide to disaffiliate.
Conference or church?
Or church. Well, it'll be a-
General Conference.
it'll be a-
General Conference.
it'll be a general conference.
The other thing, if we decide to disaffiliate, there's a cost that's part of that. But you also need to understand that if we become a part of the Global United Methodist Church, at this point, we decided to disaffiliate, not the Global Methodist Church, we would be under a call system. You will not have a pastor appointed. Plus, you have to apply to the Global Methodist Conference to be accepted. So that is what may happen if disaffiliation is, if the church goes forward with disaffiliation.
Just to be clear, Reverend Smith, is it accurate that based on the 2019 vote, which supported the traditional approach, that has standing and all conferences are required to abide by that?
Yes, right now.
Okay. Lorraine? I'm sorry, Mrs. Hobbs.
I'm curious about this disaffiliation. If we decide to do that, we go with the global?
Well, what the approach SBPRC is using is that we want you to be informed on all the options. And we simply, at this time, do not know or have all the options. So we want to give you as much information. And should we decide to disaffiliate, it'll be clear why we're disaffiliating and what our options are. There are several options to disaffiliation. But our task this afternoon is to keep you informed and define and understand the problem. Sister Dorothy.
I'm back to Barrett's question. I need to understand, it's not clear, what are the two groups? You say traditional and the other. Let us know what we're talking about. What is traditional? What does that involve? What is the other thing? You know, like one group want to go this way, one group want to go that way. Sort of explain that to us a little bit more in detail, so that we can get a better understanding. Because you got to understand the basic first,
Right.
and then we can understand the
Right.
repercussions and all.
Right.
Thank you.
Reverend Smith?
The traditionalist plan and what was voted on in 2019 maintains the Book of Discipline of no self-avowed practicing homosexual will be ordained. It also has a number of other restrictions about even the election of bishops, which were not in place when our current bishop was elected. The traditional plan basically stays with the Book of Discipline in terms of no self-avowed practicing homosexual. There will be no, clergy cannot do same-sex marriages. But those are the two main things that the traditional plan holds on to. So the other would be those who disagree with the traditional plan. So does that help you?
So what do they call themselves?
Well, that has been called a variety of things, from progressive to liberal.
Inclusive?
Inclusive, thank you, inclusive.
It helps when you're talking about it, if you say that this is what this means, so that I get in my head, progressive and inclusive means this, traditional means that, then I can understand what you're saying.
Thank you for that clarification for us to understand when we move forward and how we describe the two opposing things. And the thing is, there may be a third option coming out of General Conference. We don't know. We know what's supposed to happen, but that doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
AJ?
Yeah, these are questions from the website. Keep in mind, if you guys want to be anonymous on the website, you can ask the questions there. It will say on the website, join the discussion. One question is, if we choose to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church, what are our options of joining another conference?
We don't know what we don't know, and we just don't know at this time. There will be several options, but again, our first task is to define the problem, decide if we want to be traditional or inclusive, and how that plays into the Mountain Sky Conference.
So is this a worldwide issue right now or just national?
This is a global issue.
Global?
For the United
For the
Methodist,
United Methodist Church.
United Methodist Church. Barbara, we have Mr. Darwin. Just wait for the mic, please, Mr. Darwin.
Thank you.
And hold the microphone, please. It's on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I just keep wondering, what will happen if we decided to disaffiliate and 2024 is not conclusive at this point, and 2024 from the general what have you will decide what is going to happen, and everything else is subject to that decision in 2024, then what are we doing?
We don't have the answer to that, one, because this is a kind of a moving target in terms of a question. However, And again, we want you to be informed on what the two options are, staying traditional, inclusive, and there may be an option that blends both of the two. We just don't know, and as soon as we get more information from either the Mountain Sky Conference or from the General Conference, we will address that. But at this time, we don't have enough information to tell you what our options are.
And I kind of want to get back to your question. Why are we doing this is basically what I'm hearing you, because 2024 will solve a lot of our questions. We're doing this, especially this kind of a meeting, for answers or for questions to come out, because there's so much anxiety about the way the trustees rolled out, the annual conference trustees rolled out this disaffiliation process. So we want all of you to know, what is it about? We may not have enough information to truly even vote in 2023. That's going to be, but you will have, at the point we have a vote, you will have the information you need. And it's worth noting, again, that many of the larger churches in our conference that are thinking about disaffiliation aren't moving until 2024, till it's clear what's going to happen. But they've already made their decision, pretty much. We haven't. So that's why we're doing this now.
Ray Jones Jr.?
I've had a chance.
Oh, okay.
I've already had a chance. So
Oh, okay. You can use it.
Speaking as a member of the SPPRC, to kind of focus a little bit more on your question, the reason we wanted to have this meeting was because there was a lot of misinformation that was being spread. And so we wanted to have a discussion, get as many questions as we could from our members to find out what was important to you and what we need to probe and try to find so that we can find those answers. It's very important to understand this is just a question. This is going to be a long process. No decisions are going to be made anytime soon. We're waiting, trying to gather as much information as we can so we can present it to you, because we want to be as transparent and open with our members as possible. So there are a lot of great questions that have been asked, and unfortunately, we're having to tell you we don't know because the information just isn't available. But we want you all to understand that this is going to be a process so that there's not going to be any rash decisions that are made. Everyone will be informed, and when it comes time to vote, by that time, we should have had the answers available to answer all of your questions. So that's the primary reason we're doing this, is to get rid of any misinformation or any concerns so that we can address them appropriately. And as we gather more information, there'll be more meetings and hopefully more answers to your questions.
Are there any questions, written or otherwise? Daphne McGee, and then we'll come back to you, Jane, as you've had one question. Oh, I'm sorry, Deirdre. These are AARPIs. I don't always get it right.
I just quickly wanted to mention something of being totally transparent on this process, that if Scott does decide whenever, a year from now, a year and a half from now, there are financial, I want to say ramifications, I guess that is what they are, that do come into play. For example, we pay apportionments. Our apportionments are 10% of our revenue. We would have to pay 1 year of revenue, of apportionments for the forward year. You know, if we left today, we still would have to pay for in the future at least 1 year. There are terms about the pastor's benefits, etc. But there is a cost, and also there are some details about the building. So there is a lot to this, and we do just need to take it a bite at a time, I think, and try to get the information we can. Okay?
And to Deidre's point, that document is on the website, and it's verbatim what the church has received. It's verbatim, and you're welcome to read it. What's not on the website, and it's because we don't know. They being the Mountain Sky Conference trustees have given parameters, and Deidre has tried to take a stab at that. But again, we cannot concisely say what the monetary costs would be for disaffiliation.
I'd like to add a little something to that. Last night in talking with the DS, she pointed out something that I had missed. If you disaffiliate, you will also pay a portion of the unfunded pension. So there's a liability there, not necessarily my pension, but this is going to affect all the pastors, and so they will be charging you a part of that unfunded pension plan for all pastors. I also want to let you know, or to remind you, as a United Methodist Church, we own this building and will own it when we pay it off. However, if we should cease to exist as a United Methodist Church, then that goes to the conference. This disaffiliation process is supposed to be a grace-filled process where we can make sure we keep our church if we decide to disaffiliate. That's what the 2553 plan wanted to make sure that people could walk away with the property. So that's why all this financial stuff comes into play. And you may think that we're being taken advantage of if we want to leave the church, but the reality is this is not our church if we cease to exist. Plus, you may think they don't want to pay that $600,000 plus of mortgage, but guess what? This building is sitting on land worth $3 to $4 million. They would have no problem taking care of the mortgage. So don't let that come into your thinking. That they won't do that, because $3 to $4 million in the current market.
It seems like it's more of a financial issue than a spiritual, I know.
Well, Barry, that's what I'm trying to explain. That's what I'm trying to explain. If it's a spiritual issue, if you're going to do it for consciousness, but you have to understand, you've already made the commitment to stay in the United Methodist Church. If you leave it and you want your building, it's going to cost you, and that's just fair. I'm sorry I have to put it that way, but that's just fair. That's the understanding you've had since we were United Methodist. The courts will uphold that. They have done that.
Hold on, Barry. Barry, we will give you the mic next.
Questions only. So I've written down, may there be an opportunity to be more informed, learn more about homosexuality?
Yes, we have, as part of our information outreach, we will be giving, we being Reverend Smith and/or the leadership will be giving, I just volunteered you.
I know, and you volunteered yourself too. You said, and the leadership.
We'll be giving Bible study on the issue of sexuality and human sexuality and homosexuality, so you can understand how that relates to this whole decision that we will be partaking. Charles? I'm calling it Bible study, but let me be clear. It'll be information sessions focusing on the issue of human sexuality.
I haven't decided yet exactly how I'm going to do that. I may preach on specific scriptures, giving you a point of view. We'll meet afterwards for your response and debate. That's one way I'm thinking about doing that. So you have an opportunity not just to take my word for it, but to come back with your own reasoning. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it that way or not, but that may be one way. Give me some input, what you would like to see.
I'm just curious, what's Park Hill United Methodist Church position on this matter?
Yes, yeah, the question was, what is Park Hill United Methodist Church issue on this matter? And I cannot speak for Park Hill. What I do have that's factual is Park Hill United Methodist Church is one of the churches that signed a petition that says, no, we will not comply with the 2019 vote or discipline.
I can tell you what it is because I was their pastor when they did it. They are a reconciling congregation, which means they will accept homosexuals, gay, lesbian, and they will make space for them. And so they are a reconciling church. And you may not know it, but Valerie Jackson is going there, and she is a black lesbian pastor. So that's Park Hills. But we are not bound by Park Hill. We never have been. So they go their way, we go ours. But it's a good question to know what another multicultural church, and with a lot of black people in it, is thinking.
And many of us have lived or continue to live in Park Hill.
He's just speaking on his experience at Park Hill, but in that petition, it was, I believe, around 12 churches. How many? Yeah, it was 12 churches that submitted a petition to the bishop stating that they will not comply with the 2019 Book of Discipline. And that document is available, so just contact me if you want it interim, or better yet, we will put it on the website after it's been vetted.
I would bet that all 12 churches are reconciling congregations, which means inclusive to all people, all sexual orientations.
Again, if you got questions that we don't address today, write them down on your cards and we will get back to you.
We have Daphne, and well, first, George, we have Daphne because Barry has had a question, and then we'll come back to you, Barry. Daphne and then Barry.
Just clarify, please. Although you just mentioned that there are several reconciling churches, am I correct?
Reconciling congregations.
Congregations. And I guess what I'm saying is that doesn't necessarily mean security until the decision from the General Conference comes down, am I correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by security.
That those churches would remain under the umbrella of the United Methodist Church. Or with it, you're not understanding.
I know what you're saying. I'm thinking that at this point, and this is only my opinion, since it seems to be those traditional and conservative churches that are right now disaffiliating, I'm thinking if the protocol passes, there will be a United Methodist Church. There will remain a United Methodist Church, and conferences will have the option of staying in it or leaving it. Churches will have the option of staying in it or leaving it.
The way I understand it also is, it seems to be somebody, underlying question is, in 2024, are they going to change it and say, as addressing Philip, will they change it and say, no, we're going to stay as we are? I don't think they're going to address the traditional versus inclusive in 2024. They got other issues they're going to address, but
there's other issues.
Yeah.
I'm thinking at this point, since they passed the disaffiliation process, the church is going to split. How it splits, we're not sure. What that means for all of us, we're not sure. I am more than 50% sure there will be a United Methodist Church. It just won't be the same as it has been. While they're doing that, you need to understand we're the last of the major denominations to go through this process. Presbyterians have already done it. Lutherans have done it. We are probably the last denomination, major denomination, to go through this process of split over human sexuality.
Right now in the United Methodist Church, the Mountain Sky.
Hey, I can't hear her, and I'm standing right in front of her, please.
The Mountain Sky Conference right now is considered a non-compliant conference. We are a non-compliant conference because we have said we are not going to comply with the vote that was taken in 2019 for the traditional plan, which is in accordance with the existing discipline. If you have chosen not to comply, we are a non-compliant conference. Mountain Sky is. So one of my questions I have written is, might we face any kind of sanctions by the United Methodist Church because we are non-compliant? And those reconciling churches that have determined we're not going to do it, they are non-compliant at this time with the United Methodist Church.
I can't answer that at this point. I will say that the Judicial Council has taken up the issue of our lesbian bishop, and they did not choose to say she can no longer be a bishop. They did not find anything within the book of discipline that said she couldn't be. Interesting. Those who brought, but probably most of that was due to who brought it didn't have standing. So the Judicial Council has a lot of decisions that will be coming out in October. They are meeting again, and so a lot more will be determined then. I would say to you, the way things are going, and this is just my opinion, I doubt if the conference is going to have sanctions. They've done what they could to us already.
Well, and I'm thinking after 2024.
After 2024.
On what still stands.
Yeah.
We cannot just remain non-compliant
Then,
as a conference.
at that point, what will happen, I venture to guess, the Western jurisdiction, which has 6 conferences, will disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church.
And Jane, would you be so kind as to submit your question? Because it does have merit, and we'd like to dig deeper into it and perhaps get more information about it, if not get a formal response to this question. Ron Green?
Friends, I would just like to say, we have taken, as a committee, the SPPRC committee has taken the time and energy and effort to make this information available. Please go on the website and read it for yourselves, because you will get all of the questions that are coming forth. They're good questions and they need responses. However, in the privacy of your home, there might be other questions that you have that will be lifted. So in order for us to do what we've been charged to do, we're asking, please go on and read what we have so you'll come up to speed with where we are. Going forward at the next meeting or next several meetings, there might be other things that come out. But I do ask that you go on and read the most. I read it in about an hour and a half last night, and so I know each one of you, it'll take about that long, because the bishop has listed some things of why we are non-compliant, and those are things that are in the readings that are available to us. And if we don't read it, shame on us.
Let me interject. Jane, on your card, you had another question. Can Scott be assigned to any other conference? We don't know at this time, but we will ask that. And so we're down to our final three questions. Yes, you have the floor.
My question is, hello, can you hear me? Rocky Mountain Sky Conference is non-compliant, which has several churches under its umbrella. Is that part of this disaffiliation process? So church by church will say, yes, I agree with this, or no, I don't. Is that part of the outcome
I got it.
of these?
Right now, you can disaffiliate. One of the reasons you can disaffiliate is reasons of conscience, which includes you don't agree with your conference's stand.
Well, let me recognize Jack.
Yeah, so my question was what she said. Just how will the information be disseminated to those who do not have website access?
We will have the Scott communication team, which submits information electronically and via snail mail. So the last batch went out from the newsletter, and there was a big section on this subject. So to your question, we'll get information out electronically, and I think there's about 40 or so that do not have email or access to the website, so we will contact them manually.
The other place for information I learned last night is the conference website. They now have a tab with information about the disaffiliation process and the information that they currently have. So that you can go to the Mountain Sky. We are not the Rocky Mountain Conference any longer. We're the Mountain Sky Conference website. And there's a tab there that will give you further information, including information about the cost of disaffiliation. It's on there.
Are there any other questions, either those that are written down that you'd like to submit, or I think we're down to our final question for someone who hasn't had a chance to ask a question? Anyone else have any questions? Well, with that, thank you.
Can I have a closing?
Yes.
As your pastor, I struggle with this because I know, as the Texas politician said, half my friends are for it, half my friends are against it, and I stand with my friends. So and that's truly the position I feel put in. I feel like this. But what I hope comes out of this process is that we will be a strong, united church, whether it's United Methodist or some other church, that we will be together in this process, deciding to stay together because of who we are and our love for each other. That's what I'm hoping for out of this process. Just because the Methodist Church is splitting doesn't mean we have to. And that's why we're taking time to discuss this and to see if we can come to an understanding with each other about where we would like to be, and that we stay together as a church. That is my goal. That is my goal as your pastor in leading forward in this.
Yeah, final quick question, Barry, before we.
Other denominations, you say that they've been through the same thing.
Yeah, Reverend Smith, Barry. He's asking, what's the status of the other denominations that have gone through this process?
They have two denominations. The Presbyterians have two, Lutherans have three. They just have, did a split, or they stayed together and people left for whatever their stance was going to be. I'm not counting Baptists, no. Because I don't know, yeah, what the
Time,
Baptist
time,
is.
time. Well, thank you all for the questions, and let me, before we adjourn, beg your pardon? Oh, you're welcome, you're welcome. Our next steps are, we will continue to gather as much information. Our next meeting will be September 11th. It will be an after-church meeting. We will kind of take a recess from the subject over the summer months. However, the SPPRC will still be engaged. We will still be posting information on the website. We will still be responding to your questions. However, our next meeting will be a after-church meeting similar to this one, and following that meeting, we will begin our other smaller group meetings, and we will start engaging in our biblical studies regarding the subjects. So with that,
You better study up, bro.
so with that, let me say thank you all, and continue to stay prayed up. This is it's a tough subject, and we just want to make sure we take time and get it right, and more importantly, that you all are informed and knowledgeable about what the processes are and what the overall disposition is. And we do have a couple questions that we will follow up on, written questions, one or two, and so we will post those and we will get your responses to those questions. So thank you all as we adjourn.
I would like for you to set some time so we can talk because